Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Avocado Gamescast, organized by members of the AV Club After Dark community. I'm Merve, and I'm here today with Armando.
Hello.
PT.
Yo.
Snazzlenuts.
Hello.
And TheKappa.
Hey.
All right. How are you guys all doing?
Very well.
Yeah, doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Just fine, not excellent.
I am amazingly great.
Well, that went to the opposite end of the spectrum right there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get acquainted with everyone. Why don't we start with sharing what we were playing at the moment? Armando, what have you been playing recently?
I've been playing Overwatch mainly. I also just bought Resident Evil 5 HD, which I mentioned earlier, and Monster Hunter Generations.
Sweet. How are you enjoying Overwatch?
I think I've put about 200 hours in this game now, so I think I'm enjoying it way too much.
Has it even been out for 200 hours?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Yeah, I guess it's been out for a few months now.
Initial date was 24th of May. So it's been a couple months. Yeah.
Okay. So it has been out for a while. Yeah, it's clearly been addictive for a lot of people. It's been really popular.
Now, I heard that the co-op portion of it, or there was a new thing that was kind of broken a little bit, like matchmaking, competitive mode.
Yeah, matchmaking has been a really rough, but I think this is because Blizzard really has no experience with doing all this stuff on consoles, that it's led to some, I guess, just odd fixtures in that area.
Is the matchmaking cross-platform, or is it only, like, do PS4 players only play with PS4 players?
It's still exclusive to their exact thing. It's just they still have to do it on 3 different setups with Xbox One, with PS4, and with PC.
Okay, so that does get complicated when you have multiple platforms to worry about, even if you're not worrying about them interacting, which is a whole other ball game.
Yes.
That's Overwatch. That's something you're enjoying. PT, what have you been playing recently?
Well, I first wanted to say that the least favorite thing I've been playing recently is the wonderful thing called PC hardware problems.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
But no, it actually leads to the thing I was playing the majority of the last time we talked. I decided, I should buy another stick of RAM, another 8 gigabytes. And I essentially just went to I went to Newegg, I went to my order history, I confirmed it was the same exact piece. My motherboard has 2 slots. It's kind of a cheap.
One of the slots is currently empty, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 1 slot's currently empty. And I said, I can do this. I can totally put this in. And it turns out that when I put the second piece of RAM in, it simply will not boot. It will not post. The fans will run and the hard drive will go, but it will never post. I'm thinking, that's strange. So I took it out and I Googled it, and it turns out that my model has 1 or 2 people that have had questions about why does this not post, and it's a tad frustrating, obviously, because it shouldn't be super difficult to install RAM on one's computer. Basically, it's just, but yeah, it's that's that there. But to kind of lead into what I was saying there, you might have heard me talk about this over at the Avocado, but the game I've been primarily playing these last 2 weeks was Batman Arkham Knight.
That game.
Which is, by the way,
I have a lot of thoughts on that game.
I have a lot of thoughts on that game. Yes, I do too. First off, as you might have been aware, the PC port is terrible. It's bad.
I actually had a fairly decent experience with it, and I'd still consider it not acceptable for a PC port. Like, I had multiple crashes and memory leaks, but otherwise the game ran fine, and I'd still consider that pretty bad.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be there, but it depends. I mean, sometimes, and granted, I was doing super low settings. I mean, it looked like a game. I mean, it wasn't like some monstrosity of awfulness on my screen. I mean, it looked like a video game. But there were some times where I'd be going 50, 60 frames a second, flying through the sky. And then there would be points where, in the Batmobile sequences, that I would just decide, you know what, we're just going to, judder the whole trip.
Yeah, the Batmobile especially would drop the frame rate a lot. Have they actually removed the 30 FPS cap? Because that was there when I played it.
From what I recall, there's a 30, a 60, and a 90 in the actual options.
Okay, because when I played it, there was just a hard 30 FPS cap. Oof. So they must have, in the massive patches they did, they must have unlocked the frame rate.
But yeah, there were times where, hey, it just worked perfectly okay. And then there were moments where, oh, it's a shame you want to chase this truck everywhere and you need all the reflexes you can get. We're going to go at 10 frames a second. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And it's just the game's issues are not especially equivalent to the PC port. I mean, or exclusive rather. Words are hard. But no, it's essentially it just I kind of felt to myself that this was Rocksteady. This is the third game they made. They didn't do Origins.
Yeah.
And I feel like they just kind of stretched out the whole situation, the whole game, just something that's overstuffed, just not very playable. I mean, the combat system for one, it's just, I mean, I'm perfectly okay with having to, balance, multiple enemies and multiple ways of fighting. But after a while you have normal guy, and you have guy with knife, and you have...
Oh, the knife guys are still the worst.
And you have big guy. And
guy with gun.
You have guy with gun. You have giant guy with shield. You have medics now. Medics are in the game, which I think are just silly. Medics who can electrify other people. Therefore, you have to pull out the bat claw and de-electrify them so you can hit them. And it just becomes a giant, giant mess of combat, which is not how that combat system was ever designed to be. I mean, I know a lot of people have said, oh, you can just mash, square all day and, you'll win. Well, first off, they're wrong. But again, I think Rocksteady as a whole decided that, oh, we're going to take that really incorrect stereotype of sorts of this combat system and just make it overly way too complicated, where if you just feel like mashing around, you are going to get, killed. You are going to get just completely wrecked. And sometimes, especially with the frame rate just jumping all over the place, you're just not really in the mood to do that. And it's a tad upsetting. I mean, but, so yeah, the nuts and bolts of it just being kind of not working is the other thing. And then we have the Batmobile, which I'd like to joke is, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's ever used this joke, is the Poochie of this game.
I believe. Yeah. You're definitely the first one to make that joke.
I mean, it's the one thing that really came to mind was towards the beginning when you're going to the chemical factory before the first big moment of the game, and you have to make the Batmobile go this way and make sure you climb up to this control panel so you can set up the bridge so you can jump the pit and then repeat and repeat. And it's why am I doing this? Why can't Batman just bust through a window or something? It's just...
It does add a lot of busy work to the game.
There are instant death sequences that I died maybe, I don't know, a dozen times because I never quite understood where to properly put that in. And it's just... So that was super frustrating. And, I mean, among all of that, quite honestly, I just thought the story was just a total mess. And I don't know how much I want to go into it based on the fact that a lot of what I would be discussing essentially spoiled Arkham City.
I think we can spoil Arkham City. It came out, 4 or 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
We can spoil Arkham
5.
City.
That was 6 or 7.
Okay, so essentially, at the end of Arkham City, Joker was not good. For all we know, Joker was dead. I mean, because he wasn't given the antidote, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So
Joker died.
Joker died, basically.
We can say that.
Okay, and so towards the beginning of this game, it's revealed that, oh no, Joker is now inside Batman or something. And so that means he gets to talk a lot. And he never shuts up. Ever. And it just gets really, really old. I think someone decided, oh, everyone really liked Joker in the past, the first 2 games. We should have him all the time. And it's no, it's just, especially when it's the same beats over and over again.
It felt like a way that they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted Joker's death to have weight, but they also wanted to keep having the Joker. So the only way you can do that is put the Joker in as a hallucination in Batman's brain.
Right, and it's just you're a giant failure. Boy, that person that died is, you're a failure, Batman. And then it goes over and over again. It's just yeah, I get it. It's if the PC version wasn't so dreadful, the port, and people were actually modding this thing, I could imagine someone creating a shut Joker up except for the real important parts mod, which would improve the situation dramatically. Because there are some crucial moments with Joker, which basically notes the entire Arkham Knight, plot twist. But it's just, after a while, it's like, dude, shut up. Just stop. Stop talking now. It's like, I want Batman to brood to himself now. And it was just, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I could tell the wound is raw right now. I was going through this. I was going through like this exact same thought process when I played it was it last year that it came out? Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going through that exact same thought process. Like, who made this garbage? Why are there no boss fights in this game? Why are all the levels so boring? Why do I have to drive around in the Batmobile? Like, this was all stuff I was thinking last summer. And now you're thinking it, and I recognize my thought process in what you're saying.
In all fairness, I believe I paid $20 for this. I believe it was like Bundle Stars had a this and season pass for like $20, I believe. So I got off pretty unscathed overall.
Yeah, I paid $120. I got a statue with mine. It's a pretty nice statue. That's better than the whole game itself.
Don't pre-order.
I know, that's what makes me scared about No Man's Sky.
Oh, man.
And to be quite honest with that game, and it's no fault of the developers, and I'm just thinking, there is no way they're going to meet the hype of certain people. Like people who sent wasn't threats to them when they delayed it for 3 weeks or something.
Yeah. Who does that? Why? I don't even understand that. What's even funnier is they didn't just send threats to No Man's Sky developers. They sent threats to the reporter who wrote the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how's that going to change anything?
That's a mess. But no, but beyond that, I've just been kind of catching up on things. I mean, it's funny because I have all these new games. I have a lot of adventure games I should be playing. Like I have Kentucky Route Zero, which I've never really started, and I have Life is Strange, which I've never really started. And I just have these. You would think to yourself, okay, I'm just gonna have a small little game where it's very calm. I don't have to do a whole lot, just listen and such. And an adventure game sounds right. And I'm thinking, I just don't want to play those. So it's back to Dolphin emulation, I guess. And so I'm playing Paper Mario 1000 Year Door again with high resolutions, higher textures. And hey, that game is still fun, though the basically the things between the chapters.
Interstitial.
Are we trying to say interterrestrial or interstitial?
Interstitials, thank you. Okay. Please edit out all my mispronunciations. But no, it's just, I think those they come off as really, I didn't really like the whole princess goofs around bits in the original Paper Mario. And now we have her dealing with some HAL computer, talking about what is love. And then there's another, on the other side of it, there's Bowser.
Wait, Paper Mario is philosophical now?
No, it's Princess is trapped in this castle, because the enemies are the X-Nauts, the letter, and they're this weird alien race of some sort, but yeah, so she gets trapped.
Sorry, I'm just trying to imagine all this in the Mushroom Kingdom.
I mean,
so freaking weird.
Well, I mean, the first thing about that game is
it's really weird.
I mean, the first thing about that game is oh, hey, you're going to go to a place called Rogueport, and we'll just have that be the hub for the entire game. But so it's essentially kind of outside the Mushroom Kingdom, if you will. But no, it's the princess. She communicates with this computer, which is clearly meant to be HAL from Space Odyssey, and just does all the jokes there, and even does the close up of the computer eye and all that stuff, and then on the other side, you have Bowser chasing around, trying to track Mario because no one kidnaps the princess except me. And so we have these weird bits where he's these side scrolling. It doesn't really work all that well. But the game itself is a lot of fun, and I've always been of the opinion that the Paper Mario games are better than Mario RPG. I know some people think the opposite, and well, I don't agree with them. But that's essentially what I've been playing.
All right. That sounds like you've been having... I was going to say you've been having a lot of fun, but that would sound sarcastic after
I didn't dislike Arkham Knight, but at the same time, it's just like, why is there so many things wrong with this game?
Yeah, that's the feeling I got too when I was playing it. That it wasn't outright bad, but there was so much that was wrong with it that it ended up being sort of this mediocre sludge.
If I had to review it, it'd be like this B-, C+, maybe 6.57 game, and then all the fanboys would just jump on me like how I'm apparently a failure or something, a disgrace. But
public opinion on the Arkham games turned almost instantly after Arkham Knight, after the PC release, after the game itself was very middling. I feel like a lot of people just not trust Rocksteady anymore.
That's true in a way, but
yeah, I mean, I don't trust WB as a publisher for sure after they released the PC version of the state that it was. And then all that mini scandal came out that they'd farmed out the PC port to this inexperienced developer that did a really shitty job porting it.
It was Iron Galaxy, wasn't it? And they're not.
I believe it was.
They're not the most bush league. I mean, they do fighting game ports. I mean, they did a pretty good Third Strike port. They're now dealing with Killer Instinct. I think they're now the people. So it's not like it's not.
I think it was more the problem that they didn't have enough time to do it. They were given far too little time to port such a large game. So they cut corners, and it showed.
Oh, God. It was fun back into there. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. So, Snazzlenuts, what have you been playing?
I have been playing Salt and Sanctuary quite a bit on PS4.
That's like the 2D Dark Souls-ish.
It
game,
is.
Right?
It's a 2D Dark Souls game, right down to the unforgiving combat, the boss fights where the area of attacks are really, really questionable. So the game just decides that a boss will hit you and you'll fly across the map and die. It's
wacky hitboxes.
Yeah, wacky hitboxes are great. It's fun right now. I'm having a good time kind of figuring the game out, even though it can be difficult. Some of the boss fights were pretty good, but it never felt really unfair. The skill tree, oh my gosh, I need a Rosetta Stone to figure this thing out. It's insane. But
so
after
it's not like an actual tree. It's like the branches split and then remerge and then
then they go off in these little spirals and different it's ridiculous. I really would like to meet the person that designed that. It took really I realized I messed it up very, very badly with one character, and I was early on enough in the game that I decided to start over. And I've kind of got one path with a certain type of weapon I want to use and just trying to match the symbols, but that's a little convoluted. That's probably my only complaint, is I'm not really sure how that skill tree works, how it really affects the stats of the weapons. But other than that, the game's fun. It looks really, really good. It kind of looks like, Muramasa Demon Blade. It almost has kind of that style.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of cell shading and everything. But the sprites have really, really good detail. So far the enemies, I don't think I'm far enough in to get a little too much difference into the different enemies that are attacking, but it's fine. I'm kind of enjoying that.
Are you playing it solo or co-op?
I'm playing it solo. I haven't found anyone to co-op.
It's really fun as split screen co-op. It's one of my top recommendations for that.
Okay. Yeah, there's one vendor you can go to where you can buy a sellsword, and a sellsword is another person playing the game. However, I don't think there are very many people playing this game, because I've gone, unless I'm doing the sellsword thing completely wrong, because I've gone up to the vendor and hit X to look for a sellsword, and there is no one there. So it seems like it.
Similar to the Dragon's Dogma. Did you guys ever play that? Where they had the characters you could pull into your game. There were some that were real people, some that weren't. If you've never played it, it's a pretty solid RPG, but it sounds like the same system.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there might be an audience that it came out on PC like a couple months ago, so I imagine there's an audience now. But no, I can understand that. I mean, there are just some games that shouldn't have multiplayer, and eventually you're kind of telling yourself when you like see these games, like, this isn't going to attract an audience. Like, why are they even trying? And it's a little upsetting, I imagine, for them. But yeah.
I mean, I'd like to at least give it a shot with PvP, not PvP, but co-op before, like, I decide that this stinks. But I don't know. I've seen a couple characters run into these sanctuaries, which is like the bonfire areas in Dark Souls. But I keep seeing this guy in a red outfit with a spear, so I think it might be the same dude. I don't know, unless there's a bunch of people wearing that outfit and has the same weapon, but I doubt that would be quite the coincidence that over the past couple days I've been playing at the same time as this other guy somewhere in the exact same area at the exact same time.
Sounds like you need to make friends with that person.
I should. It doesn't even have their name, so I mean there'd be no way I could contact them.
The random encounter like Journey or something.
You could put it up in like Craigslist missed encounters.
That's a good idea. Other than that, I've been playing Uncharted 4, and yeah, I love the Uncharted games.
That's like the first positive thing we've heard all podcast.
Yeah. Well, just wait.
Oh man, this is
Uncharted 1 was fine. Uncharted 2 was fantastic.
Yes,
I mean, how they changed absolutely everything, all the mechanics, everything like that. Uncharted 3, fine. Okay, it did 2. 2 was fine, and they were just kind of repeating some of the stuff. Whatever.
Right.
Had a good story. 4. It is exactly like 2, exactly like 3. The jumpy parts are jumpy. The shooty parts are shooty. It has Uncharted controls where you're like trying to grab a handhold and the hand, Drake's just hanging there off a cliff, moving his arm up and down.
Oh yeah, now they added the arm movement mechanic now, so you have to point your thumbstick in the right direction.
I've come to realize that while I'm playing this game, I don't care about the shooting parts. I don't care about the jumping parts. I just want the story. And if they had just released Uncharted 4 kind of like an animated movie, like they do with Final Fantasies, I would watch the shit out of that. Because I think the story here is really solid. The voice acting is superb. The graphics are beautiful. I mean, all the backgrounds and everything like that are absolutely phenomenal. But it's the shooting parts really aren't that engaging. I mean, it's just, wave after wave bad guys come until they're all dead. Then you just move on to the next area, climb up a cliff, do some sort of crazy pirate puzzle, and then shoot a bunch of guys, repeat everything like that. And then everything's intercut with 5-minute cutscenes and everything, but that's the stuff that I'm kind of really interested in this. So I'm having a hard time with this game because I really, really, really want to love it, but it's just very frustrating. And I don't know if part of that is I'm just kind of sick of the mechanics, or if the driving a Jeep through Madagascar made me hate life and this game.
Yeah, I wasn't so hot on the driving sections. I don't know how far you are in the game, so I don't want to spoil anything.
I watched my wife play the game, except the ending. That's the only thing. But
so I won't go to the ending, but I will say, the driving never really gets better.
No.
But I personally enjoyed the combat sections because I found they're a little bit more dynamic than the first 3 games. That you had to sort of move around the map a bit more. The optimal way to play the first 3 games is just sort of sit at the back of a combat arena and kind of snipe at people. This one, you can move around a bit more, it's kind of built around, using melee or takedowns or whatnot. So I enjoy that a bit more. I still say, though, that the platforming sections are still not terribly engaging, and the additions they added, like the pickaxe, which is lifted straight from the 2013 Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's not a terribly exciting addition.
No.
To the platforming arsenal.
No. One thing I will agree about the combat is, you like you said, they don't allow you to sit back. Most of the time, because any cover that you're behind can be shot away. So if you're just sitting in one spot, your cover will be obliterated. So yeah, it encourages movement and moving in the brush, kind of hiding in the brush while you're moving along. That part, and ambushing guys, like beating them up, choking them out, and brush and leaving them there. That's kind of interesting. But as I was saying about the Jeep, or as you were too, driving in non-driving games is terrible.
Back to Batman.
I will say this for Uncharted 4. The driving was better than Watch Dogs.
Well, and I would say it was better than L.A. Noire, too.
The number of times I ran over Rusty by accident.
Yeah, I mean, I know I might have said this on Game Logical, but the Jeep, I get it. It's a rust bucket. It probably doesn't have power steering, but you don't need to put that in the game. You don't have to have the Jeep handle like it doesn't have power steering. And then the winch, if there's a hill that's too steep and muddy, there's a winch at the front of the Jeep. And you got to climb the bank with the winch in hand, tie it around the tree, climb back down the bank, then drive up slowly. Why? Why?
Feels like a way of gating progress. I don't know exactly why they do that. Maybe it helps them. Maybe it has to do with the way they load the map or something like that. But it feels like an artificial way of gating progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm slowly making my way through that. And the only other thing I'm playing when I'm too frustrated to play Uncharted 4 is Destiny, which I have been playing that game since January, almost every damn day. And
do you get back to playing Uncharted 4 when you're too frustrated with playing Destiny?
Yes, I do. It's a vicious circle. It's a vicious circle. It's like I'll play a game like what I was doing when Dark Souls 3 came out, was I'd play Dark Souls 3, get really sad, then play Destiny, feel okay about myself, and then it's just like this, go into PvP, get my ass handed to me, it's like, I'm going to go stab things again, and then just cycle.
Sounds like you need to break the cycle, man.
I do. You guys got anything fun I could do? Huh? Any recommendations of a happy game?
Happy game. Yeah, Kappa.
Yes.
Have you been playing happy games?
No, I've been actually playing a very depressing game. It's called...
You've been playing Not Dragon Cancer or something?
No. Yeah, exactly. No, I wish I was playing that. That's almost be more fun. No, right now I am doing the let's get all these mods working dance of Fallout 4 right now. I'm knee-deep in about 74 mods. I don't know why I'm doing this, but yeah, some of them are coming out real good. It's really refreshing to see how easy the mod installs have gotten. But yeah, right now I just downloaded one that basically takes Sanctuary and flattens it. It makes it a flat grid-based square so you can build exactly what you want to build. Really cool idea. I don't know how... Yeah, one of the things I hate about building the settlements is like the way everything tends to clip into itself. The ground itself is all kind of sloping. There's always little things that you can't remove. So this mod might be exactly what the doctor ordered. But I'm really looking forward to a mod-heavy playthrough of Fallout 4 once I get it all set up. I'm playing Bravely Second. When between breaks at work.
3DS?
Yeah, really enjoy it. I loved Bravely Default. One of the few people who I stand up for even that, boss clash mode at the end that a lot of people seem to hate, but I love it. The only thing about Bravely Default or Bravely Second that's kind of surprising is it seems like they threw kind of everything in the kitchen sink into it. Have any of you guys played it?
I haven't. I've heard a bit of it. I've heard a bit about it, but I don't. No.
I played Bravely. I played the first one. I did play
Okay.
Bravely Default. I kind of like liked it less the more I thought about it because first off, I didn't think the job system was like all that interesting, and like it kind of came off as like, unlike say Final Fantasy V's job system, which is constantly, we'll say it's often used as, hey, you can win this game with anything, which is why they do that the Fiesta, the job Fiesta every year for that game. And when I was playing Bravely Default and just getting super frustrated at like the second to last boss and the real ending, and I'm reading about like what am I doing wrong? It's like, oh, here's this exact way you defeat them, and it's like that's not how a job system should work in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I with Bravely Default when I beat it, I didn't read hardly anything like online internet based anything with it. Whereas I'm finding the exact opposite problem in Bravely Second. Like I'm having to really research what bosses get countered by what. You have to make decisions on your jobs now. You don't just automatically unlock all of them. You have to choose between like the thief and the red mage, for example, or the summoner and the sword master. So it's not like you just get all the jobs now, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. But the game has. Go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of Bravely jobs, tell me about the Catmancer.
Oh yeah, I haven't gotten yet. So, she's attacked me a few times, and she's been kind of like the MacGuffin of the plot to keep driving it forward. But every time she shows up, she speaks in cat puns. It's pretty terrible.
Oh, man.
But so where I'm at right now, it's kind of there's a lot of side games in this game. One of them is to repair a base on the moon. One of them is to basically send mini bosses to other people that you meet on the internet. Of course, you have to go meet people on the internet because, it really seems like the game is designed to be a hit in Japan and just kind of barely function in the United States because I've heard 3DS adoption rates in Japan is like basically everybody's got one. And if you go on any kind of public transportation, that street pass thing is just always constantly getting people, and updating your codes and stuff like that. Whereas this game...
It's also more crowded there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
More densely populated.
I mean,
Monster Hunter's the same way.
And so I feel like that part is really missing in the American version because you can only add one internet friend a day in the game's mode, and you really rely on summoning your friends for lots of parts. And you have to wait till your friend updates his summon send, which I just met 4 or 5 random people on a post somewhere, and that's my friends, and they update their moves like once a month, I guess, and so that whole part of the game is basically walled off to me. On top of that, they're not sending bosses to me to beat so I can level up easily, which everybody says, oh, to beat this game real easy, just kill these bosses that people send you. Well, that's not happening. But it does have the world's most addictive minigame in it. You create little stuffed dolls. They look like almost like little baby Godzillas, and it's like almost like a rhythm game, kind of, where they make it while your DS is idling, and if you tap certain things, it improves the quality or the speed or things like that. So it's a really addictive minigame, and I played a couple hours, every night. Well, not hours, but make a couple things here and there and check on it, check it again, because you can do it while it's idling, and really, really weirdly addictive game. So that's what that between Fallout 4, Bravely Second, and then I'm still kind of trudging along on Shadows of Mordor, which I never beat initially when it came out. I don't know why I just stopped playing with it. I'm about 3/4 of the way through with it. Just running around picking up the various elf ruins, relics, and things like that, but almost done with that. Still a fun game. Speaking back to Batman combat, a lot of those games that came out that had that same style of combat, Mad Max, Mordor, a lot of those other games, they kind of got made fun of for having derivative Batman combat. But playing Mordor and playing Mad Max, I actually think they kind of did the Batman combat better than Batman, whereas Batman was kind of the first to do it, but it seems like other games have kind of really run with it and done it in a more interesting way, especially Mad Max. But I do like the combat in Mordor a lot better than I ever did any Batman games.
The thing about Mordor, and I think I played it right before I played Arkham Knight, is that the funny thing, Mordor always made me laugh, essentially, because you have this character who can apparently just jump 50 feet in the air and climb everything and just be this crazy guy who just can stealth kill from 30 feet above. And when you were playing a similar type game like Batman, you're like, no, I really can't do that. Like, why can't Batman do this? And yeah, that game was interesting enough. Like, I can't say I particularly cared about the plot in any stretch or fashion, but the combat was okay.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I'm liking about it is going back through and picking back up after a long time. I love that stupid orc captain mode. Every now and then I'll just find one and just die to him 3 or 4 times, and make him like the Lord of Orcs and then go kill him so I can get a super rare epic rune or whatever. But it's just kind of a silly way in the game to kind of set up how you want to move through it. That game is almost just like a really, really great tech demo. The story, whatever, it's Lord of the Rings-ish, but playing through and just killing orcs is a pretty fun time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess I'm one of those people that don't like dying in games. Like, I complain a lot. So like, it's like, no, you're never going to kill me. So I've never had that chance to have like, King of the Orcs, God who killed me 17 times. I never got to that level. Maybe once or twice.
Oh, that's fun. You should try it. I know the game does a great job of making you feel really bad for dying, like with the orc taunting you as it, slices off your head or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to see that whole, like, where everybody moves up in that little screen after you die. But if you do it right and do it a couple times, yeah, you can really make yourself a nice little arch enemy to go out there and murder and gain all his power.
I'm having a sudden flashback to like the last portions of Arkham Knight, where if you fail in certain battles, you have to watch a drawn-out sequence, which you cannot skip. And boy, that gets really old.
I think all the Arkham games have that.
Did it? Like, maybe I was better at them.
Yeah, it's Joker, Penguin, basically any enemy at that chapter would have taunted you for dying and then make some little catty comment.
No, what I mean, though, is there's a sequence towards the end where you're protecting, the police station. And if you fail either the Batmobile section or the combat section, they will just have people, like, burst right in, and you can't skip the cutscene, and just open fire.
Oh.
And it takes, like, about 2 minutes. So it's considerably longer than guess you died, Bats. Ha-ha!
Even that's too long for me. I just want to get right back into it.
I'll agree. But that's what that reminded me of.
For sure. So, what have I been playing lately? I've been playing 2 things. So, I recently finished 1979 A Revolution Black Friday. Which is a Telltale-style game about the Iranian Revolution. I don't want to spoil anything about it, but I will say that it ends on a cliffhanger and in such a way that it feels a little bit incomplete. So I'm hoping that they eventually get to make
weird that kind of game would end like that.
Yeah, it was clearly made with a sequel in mind, but I feel like they didn't make the first entry in this series thematically complete by itself. And so it feels like an unfinished game, unfortunately. I've also been playing, on the PS4, I've been playing Digimon Stories Cyber Sleuth, which is a fun little Persona with Digimon kind of game. There's not much to say about it other than that it's feeding my nostalgia, because I grew up on Digimon, and Digimon are awesome. And now I get to be an adult playing with Digimon, and it makes me feel super awesome. But also, speaking of PS4 games, I've been playing this very weird game called Watching the Price of Gravity Rush Remastered on Amazon. So, let me explain to you what's been going on there. So, at the start of this week, we're recording this on Saturday, by the way, for people who are listening to this. But at the start of this week, Gravity Rush Remastered went on sale on Amazon. The normal price is $30. But the sale price, when I checked it on Monday, was posted at something like $27.50-ish. And ever since then, every few hours, the price drops by a few cents. And right now, it's currently retailing for $21.33.
On Amazon?
On Amazon.
Huh.
Yeah. So every few hours, the price drops by a few more cents. And I know that Amazon has recently instituted these new pricing algorithms, but it's still really bizarre that the price keeps changing every few hours. It keeps
Maybe
decreasing.
It's a gravity rush on price.
Yeah. The price is is consistently falling like gravity. And well, speaking of gravity, that's a nice segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is movement. I think I'm getting slightly better at the segues.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that was.
I think if you address it as a segue, it kind of doesn't make it a segue.
I was gonna say, like, you could have just slopped off the whole last part, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna move on.
Yeah, I feel like I need to point out my segues now. After last week when I really messed them up. Anyway, we're gonna pretend that this was really smooth, and we're gonna talk about movement mechanics in games. So what I want to ask you guys is, well, originally, first we were talking about driving. We were talking a lot about driving in the Batman games and driving in Uncharted 4. Driving is a kind of movement, right? So let's start specifically with driving. What makes a good driving experience in a game for you guys?
I guess I would say I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I guess it's just a smooth, consistent sort of feeling for driving. Like, I played some Grand Theft Auto games where I felt like I was constantly on, like, oil slicked, and it felt very heavy at the front, and just because it's very frustrating. So I guess I just want something smooth and simple.
Yeah, 4 felt like you were driving on ice sometimes, and it just never. And essentially, we were very happy that you could just take a taxi for very little money, or just do the GPS, because, like, I wasn't going to learn that city or learn how to drive. It's just super frustrating.
Yeah, I've played a bit of 5. I haven't played 4 that much. I've played a bit of 5, and while I understand they made some changes from 4, the driving still doesn't feel responsive. Cars take a long time to brake in that game, which makes it very hard for me to drive around. So do any of the rest of you have thoughts on driving in games?
Well, I mean, we could discuss the Mako and Mass Effect for another example of what really, really fun driving is, but I'll pass
you're
on
the
that.
one who loves the Mako, right?
No. No. That would be
loves the Mako. Keep forgetting who it is. Okay, you're one of the sane people. Okay.
Yeah. Well, my whole thing is, it's the future, okay?
Yeah.
You're flying around on a spaceship. Why can't you have a little spaceship that fits inside the other spaceship?
That's what they would do.
That you all hop in and you just, like the shuttle. Why can't you just use a little shuttle and fly around to these different spots instead of trying to go up frickin' Mount Everest to get some sort of satellite and weapons parts and all this crap, which I had to do because I'm a completionist, and I saw a question mark on the map, and I had to go there. So I blame them for that.
One of the weirdest things about driving the Mako 2 was how it seemed like they wanted you to, like, when you're looking at the terrain, you'll see a mountain, and it looks like it's too steep. I can't go up that. But no, that's exactly what you're supposed to do, is, like, edge it up at, like, that one of those weird angles. Like, everybody knows how to climb a hill in a video game, right? Like, where you kind of, like, almost sidestep your way up it. But that's driving the Mako. That's the whole experience. I don't understand why nobody did that and said, hey, wait a minute, this is stupid. I mean, even if you make it jump twice as high, you can still do a lot with it. But, yeah, the edging up the hill, to me, is one of the dumbest ways of getting around in a game I think I can think of.
Exactly.
Yeah, vehicles should not be able to climb up a 45-degree slope.
Right.
I mean, as an example of, like, good driving would, of course, be, like, the Mario Kart games. No, hear me out. The karts at least respond well when you turn them. There are mechanics that you can use to skid and all this stuff, but they put this thought and everything into all of that because it is a driving game.
Yeah, to be fair, it's a bit apples and oranges, though, right? Comparing driving games to non-driving.
Yeah, true.
But
true.
It's still a worthwhile comparison to make, I think.
Sure, exactly. Just leave the driving to a driving game and don't put it in anything else.
I was going to ask, as we were talking about driving games, how are any of you, like, super in-depth, or do you play, like, those simulation driving games, or your Forzas, or your Gran Turismos, and the like?
I'll play Forza. I got burned out on Gran Turismo, honestly. The system of Gran Turismo alone is so unenjoyable, where you start out, racing Ford Escorts until you license up, I don't know, it's just not a fun system to me. I like that Forza at least says...
I don't know whose idea it was to put grinding in a racing game. Apparently that's the thing you have to do.
It was funny. It was funny for a little while to say, okay, you get to drive a Miata or a PT Cruiser. Please choose your starting car.
Yeah, but Forza knows what you want. Forza's like, here's a Porsche. That's what you want to drive, right? Or it gets you right into there, and that's what I've always liked about the Forza. I think Forza 2, was that the one that came out in like 2014?
I think Horizon was one.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite driving games ever. And I mean, I'm not one of those people who has like a steering wheel and stuff like that, but it just felt right in a lot of ways. Very fun game. All the cars felt responsive, and it felt like they only went from good to great. Like you never had that crap tier of cars that you just have to suck up and get through. Like
I don't know why they put that crap tier in games.
I don't know.
And it's always like small sedans or hatchbacks or stuff that they make you race. I'm like, if you're gonna make me race a joke car, like have me race, I don't know, a Toyota Sienna versus a Volkswagen bus.
Yeah. I never really got it, but I think Horizon 2 was probably the best racing game I've ever played.
Yeah.
I did want to add one thing when talking about open world games, and this will be the second straight time I've mentioned this game, is Sleeping Dogs. I thought it had a really solid driving system. It was arcadey, but also sort of realistic in a way, and it never got into your way. And in fact, the driving competitions, which are usually just like death in those type of games, were actually sort of fun, which is a rarity in my eyes.
They were actually winnable.
Yes.
I will say this for the driving in Sleeping Dogs, it feels like movie driving.
Yes.
And that's good, because the whole point of that game is to feel like a Hong Kong action movie. And the mechanics more broadly, all the parkour and the fighting and the driving, it feels like you're playing an action movie. So I appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so getting away from just driving for a second, let's talk about, I love to talk about this game just in general, but shooters haven't done a lot with movement, I think, all the way up until Titanfall. Like, that was kind of a game changer for me as far as shooters go. With the wall running, the verticality, the able to get across the map really quick. We were talking a little bit about what didn't work last week in movement things, stuff like 2 humans, dual control, stuff like that. But Titanfall to me is the first time somebody ever really did anything cool with FPS movement. And then now it seems like that's what everybody's trying to do. Everybody's got grappling hooks and jump jets and boost packs and stuff. So I think that's going to just only continue from here on out. But it's a lot more fun to play. I mean, I played back in the day when like a rocket jump in Quake was a daring maneuver, but now being able to play Titanfall and just get across the map just the way however you want to, you really can. It really kind of changes how the maps play out too, because you're not just always looking to trap somebody in a corner. You're looking up, down, left, right. It really changes the games just in general. So I always like to highlight Titanfall for the way it allows you to move through the maps.
Yeah, and verticality is becoming this component of multiplayer shooters. Cliff Bleszinski's new game, Lawbreakers, right? That's incorporating things like anti-gravity and other weird mechanics like that, where movement is becoming important to the combat and actually playing the game.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're going to see that even more. I mean, even the Call of Duties now are doing that. The Black Ops 3, big add-ons, all those little things they added are all verticality based. So it's only a matter of time before that continues to be the trend. Halo's always had a little bit of that on, but that's more by map design, I would say, than anything else. Yeah,
they have all those booster jump things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the middle of the map. Yeah, I will say Halo has nicely designed multiplayer maps.
Oh yeah.
I will say that.
Yes. Overwatch is the same way. It's first person, but all the characters, because of there's a cyborg ninja who throws shuriken. He has a double jump and a not wall run, but he has a wall climb. Lucio, one of the support characters, can wall run. One character has a blink, one character has a jetpack, and another character can fly. So all these characters have these different forms of movement in a first-person game, and it's, well, kind of nauseating, but still very fun.
Yeah, and I was thinking about a couple weeks ago they had that mode where you play as Mercy and Farah. And Farah is, has like a rocket, flies above the battlefield, and Mercy can fly to another person. So you just see these maps where it's almost like an aerial battle of a first-person shooter. Really cool map set up.
I guess when you guys were talking about movement, I took kind of more of a, I don't know, literal meaning behind this, because I was starting to think about like heft and like heavy things moving, like in Shadow of Colossus or bosses in Dark Souls games, where these just giant monstrosities that you could just, the animation that it took to show the weight and how huge these things are. Like if, let's say, a giant is swinging like his club or something at you, and you can, it's one of those things where you see it coming slow enough, but you can tell that there's just this weight behind the movement swinging. I don't know. That's just kind of stuff, what I was kind of thinking of movement-wise.
Well,
Like
movement's probably like one of the first things people would use to characterize something. Something,
Exactly.
lumbering, something slow. Yeah, it's like one of the first things, I guess, in a gameplay sense that it really showcases, I guess, how you're supposed to perceive something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, speaking of movement being the way we characterize games or the way we characterize characters in games, what games have you guys really enjoyed because of their characteristic or trademark movement?
Probably Tony Hawk that comes first in mind. I mean, I don't know if Tony Hawk is just, I used to skateboard. I used to skate with my friends and stuff. Actually, one of the years I broke my knee was one of the first years I really got into Tony Hawk. And, it was just like you would see them.
Break it playing Tony Hawk.
No, I broke it. But, it was like a summer, it had nothing to do, just sitting inside. My mom got it for me. And it was such a weird experience because I remember the way I would play Tony Hawk is I would just skate around, and just look at like, oh, what if I go from here to here to here to here? And you just like start in your head just to create. This is kind of like right before the internet really was like the place to go to for all this kind of stuff. So I remember just creating runs in my head. And then my friends coming over and be like, oh, yeah, but did you know you could do this? And then them showing me a completely different way to do it. And it was all about, creating loops. And you didn't want to grind the same thing too many times because you lose points. And it was just a weird experience because you were always trying to create that perfect run, no matter where it was on the map. And, the whole game was about how to get from point A to point B, but put as many things in between there as you could that would get you as many points as you could. Really, really fun just to move around in that game. If you weren't manualing, you weren't getting points, so that was the way I always kind of kept it going. But yeah, I love Tony Hawk, and it really kind of saddens me that reboot was as disastrous as it was, because I'm pretty sure the series is dead now.
Yeah, I feel really bad for that because now it's so hard to get the original Tony Hawk games, right? Like Tony Hawk 3 is stay out of print.
Right.
You'd have to pay top dollar for that on like eBay or used on Amazon. It's unfortunate now. This sort of generation of games is lost.
That's just general problems with game archival stuff in the first place. I mean, digital distribution has helped somewhat, but not every game is going to get, restocked digitally to be played forever. I mean.
Yeah, even games that people want to restock. For example, have you guys heard of the conflict behind trying to bring No One Lives Forever back?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give some background for our listeners, what happened was Night Dive Studios wanted to license No One Lives Forever for digital distribution, but apparently the problem is that nobody really knows who owns the rights to it.
Yeah.
So one company says they have the rights to it, but they're in conflict with another company. I want to say it's Fox Interactive versus Warner Brothers, but I'm not entirely sure. We'll put it in the link dump.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's apparently there's a conflict over who actually owns the rights to this, and nobody wants to spend thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees figuring it out, so nobody can, for the moment, license it out. And so the IP is just sitting there.
Which is a bummer, because
Yeah,
I've always wanted to play those games, but their current forms just do not play well with like current PC hardware, to my knowledge.
I know it was made by Fox Interactive back when Fox had an interactive department, but as far as I know, that's been gone for a long time now.
Yeah, so the studio is Monolith.
Yeah,
I believe the same guys who made Shadow of Mordor, I believe.
Right, but the publisher was Fox, right?
Yeah, publisher was, I want to say, Fox Interactive.
Yes, I mean, between the two of them, they probably haven't either existed for 10 years now. I mean, so it's got to be somewhere in between, but, you know, I'm sure by the time you dig out a bunch of lawyers to re-release something, I don't know if you make enough money to make it worth it, so.
Yeah, that's the real unfortunate part. Yeah, so that'll be forever in the vault, unfortunately.
I wanted to say one thing about kind of a joke thing about why aren't digital games going to the vault. One game that I'm shocked never got a PC release was the second 50 Cent game, Blood on the Sands. Because I kind of want to play that, and it's not available on any. I mean, apparently the first game was just terrible, dreadful beyond words, and the second one was better.
Fun. Yeah.
I heard that the second one was sort of like a guilty pleasure game that was actually fun, even though the story was complete nonsense.
I have it on Xbox 360, and it's fun. It's dumb fun, don't get me wrong. It's like, you know how like EDF is fun, or one of those kind of games? It's fun like that. It's just, nobody really seems to be caring that they're making or in a video game, but it does a lot of funny stuff with just like, scores popping up all over this place, and you're collecting like G-Unit G's so as you go across stuff. It's just dumb, but yeah, it's fun like EDF was fun or something. You're not probably missing anything ever not playing it, but it is a lot of dumb fun. I want to say, do you remember that game Mercenaries?
Yes.
Yeah, it had that same kind of feel where like there's just like a million things all on your screen at once, and every time you throw a grenade, just like explosion of points, roll through your screen. If you ever saw a picture of the game with the UI up, it's the most ridiculous thing. I'll put a link in Skype so Merve can grab it for the link dump, but the UI itself is just god awful, but it adds to it in a weird way.
Yeah, it ends up being this weird arcadey kind of experience.
Right.
Yeah, look at that screenshot now, and it is hilarious. Oh my god, that's worse than the UI from Watch Dogs.
Yeah, but
that was busy.
That reminds me of that. What was that one game? It was like it would all constantly make puns about hitting people in the nuts or shooting them like that. I think it was a Cliff Blazinski game.
Oh yeah,
I know what you're talking about. The title is currently escaping me.
I'll look at my Steam list. It starts with it's Bulletstorm.
Bulletstorm, yeah.
When you grab them with the whip and it's like get back here or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But this game was not as tongue in cheek as that was, but it was just so bad it kind of came around to good somehow, despite everything it tried to do.
Okay, so it's earnest in its.
Yeah, it's like how The Room is a bad movie. You know what I mean? It's more incompetent than anything else. It's not a blatant. It is a blatant cash out of 50 Cent, and obviously nobody wants to be doing it. But it's just like the devs actually feel like they wanted to do something with it. Kind of cool. But then they were like, wait a minute, we're making a 50 Cent game. Let's just get this thing out the door. So.
I feel like that's a nice topic for a subsequent podcast, which would be games that are so bad they're good.
Oh yeah.
So everyone would say Deadly Premonition.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great one. That'd be number one with the bullet.
Yeah, that game crashed too much for me to be able to run it, unfortunately, because the PC port of that is just in shambles.
Yeah.
Makes the PC port of Arkham Knight look like a masterpiece. Let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I could finish Arkham Knight.
Yeah, there's literally a point to Deadly Premonition where the game just kept crashing and I couldn't get beyond it. So I was like, you know what? You're getting uninstalled. Alright, so after that digression, are there any of the games that have really memorable movement mechanics for you?
I
Or
wanted
really
to bring,
enjoyable ones.
I wanted to bring up like the 2D and the Metroidvania genre, so to speak. I mean, how very swift movement, like kind of originally came from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, so long. Symphony of the Night.
Symphony of the Night?
Symphony, yep. And actually, I'm just a total loss today. But no, the example I was really going to go across here was the recent Ori and the Blind Forest, which you should play if you haven't already. Play the definite version, because it did fix a few of the quirks from the original release. And already, when you start that game, you're just doing kind of basic movements. You can jump in this, but you learn so many like dash moves and double and triple jumps and being able to dash all over the place. And it's all so fluid, and it doesn't even like require like the most amazing reflexes. Like you already feel like you can do it, and there's a lot to explore in that game, a lot of secrets to find. And that game is one of the best I've ever seen when it comes to just naturally like creating an expanding move set that you can just go back to this world and use. And I mean, and in many ways you kind of have to use that move set, because one of the ubiquitous parts of that game are the escape sequences from dungeons, where you have to run away from flowing water or flames or other things that will kill you, and you have to do it in one shot, and it's hard.
Those sequences are brutally difficult. In fact, that whole game is deceptively difficult.
Yes.
But I will say this: if you were fighting the movement mechanics while trying to do the hard jumps and sequences, it would be a brutal game. It would be a really terrible game. But because the mechanics are so butter smooth and finely honed, you don't feel as frustrated, even when you have to repeat the same sequence like 20 times to get it right.
And I'm instantly reminded of one of the bonus areas in Guacamelee. In fact, there's one sequence where you have to do this very, very vertical, tall climb, and you have to rush up there over the wall and make sure you go from light to dark world. So this block appears at this particular time, and oops, now you're going to this spike area where one minor touch is boom, and you get to start back at the checkpoint. And that was an example of mechanics slightly being way too complicated for such a typical thing. Granted, you don't have to do this portion; it's for the true ending. But it was also very complicated. Though I like that game a lot as well for its the way you could you fly around and just navigate and just soar, but not quite as much as Ori, obviously.
I'm not a huge fan of Guacamelee. I mean, that's putting it lightly. I strongly dislike Guacamelee. But I think that's sort of like the razor's edge between like good, smooth mechanics that make Ori enjoyable. And if the movement mechanics are just slightly off, like they are in Guacamelee, it just ruins the experience for me. So I ended up loving Ori and the Blind Forest, and ended up hating Guacamelee. They're about similar levels of difficulty, but one of them just has the mechanics feeling more responsive and smoother, and that makes all the difference for me personally.
I also think it's a mood. I mean, Ori is very laid back in comparison. I mean, stuff is happening.
There are other things I dislike about Guacamelee.
The memes.
But I was just saying the movement in particular is something I didn't like. But, I didn't like the humor. I didn't like the art style. Basically, I didn't like anything about that game, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to like it. But, some games just don't click with some people. And
of course. Yeah, right. I mean, I could go on and on about how Skyrim bored me within an hour, but I'm sure that would just get...
That gets the hate tweets sent at us.
Yes.
I mean, we're already going to get hateful comments for dumping on Guacamelee. We should dump on Sonic for more.
God. Leave him alone. He's already dead.
How many podcasts have we had about bashing Sonic?
All of them.
Speaking of movement mechanics, no. We don't have to talk about Sonic again. We talk about Ori. One game I wanted to mention that had really interesting, or that's really well known for its movement, is Mirror's Edge. Specifically its sequel, which I think honed the movement mechanics a little bit better. Mirror's Edge had some very frustrating sections where the movement or the parkour didn't respond exactly as you would expect. And so there are a lot of sections where you'd kind of just miss a jump and you'd have to go back to the checkpoint. Catalyst sort of rectifies that a bit. And what's interesting about that game is that the parkour is very visceral. It's because you can see your limbs, right? And you can see when you somersault, it actually feels like you're doing a somersault. So it's this very visceral experience in that regard. And to me, that's really enjoyable. Have you guys played Mirror's Edge?
Yeah, you're right. One of the things that really helped is in a game designed around running, they do a great job as well as showing you the abilities that you have and then designing the stages around it so that you understand how you use each ability to get from one end to another. Does that make sense? Like, it's very intuitive that you see something and you can get to it. And I know that a lot of people complained that it was almost too easy the way they color-coded a lot of the stuff, but it really made it a lot more fluid to me because, when you're trying to run fast, you're like, oh, okay, there's a ledge I can grab onto. You want to just figure out your line to that ledge, and usually the stage helps you understand that. So there's a really good kind of narrative between movement and stage design in that game. I think that really makes it successful, way more successful than if you pitch that idea to most people. They'd say this game sounds terrible, but I think that everybody else would pretty much agree that Mirror's Edge is a really fun game.
Yeah, and like you said, it is very intuitive where they place everything. Like you see a wall, and you see a platform above you, you have to run up that wall and then do a quick turn and then jump off it, right? The way they put together the different level elements, you know what you need to do when you see something, and that contributes to fluidity.
Right.
Because nothing's worse in Mirror's Edge when you have to stop and figure out what you're doing. Those are the worst moments of playing that game. Probably even more so than the combat. We don't have to get into the combat right now. But.
If you think about Assassin's Creed, someone pointed this out to me. Man, I probably was like halfway through Assassin's Creed 2 when somebody finally pointed out to me. Have you ever noticed that run start, there's like a white piece of cloth like on the bottom of a box or whatever. Whenever you see that white cloth, it's like, okay, run starts here. And if you go up that thing with the white box, you can go from, transition to transition. And when somebody pointed out to me now, that's the first thing I look for when I have one of those getaway missions. I'm like, okay, where's that white rag or whatever? But noticing that really made a big difference in how I played that game. Whereas
I literally did not know that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because somebody pointed out to me.
I'm gonna actually go back and play Brotherhood, which I've.
Well, look for the little white rags, and once you find that, it's kind of like your visual cue. But Mirror's Edge does all that on a lot more organic, nature because nobody had to tell me that. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed Mirror's Edge. I haven't played the second one yet, but that's more about.
Second, I'd recommend muting every single cutscene and just playing the actual game. The actual game is wonderful. The combat is not great. I have a lot of criticisms with the combat, but the actual running is wonderful in that game. Like they really perfected it, even compared to the first game. Just ignore the story entirely because it is literally the worst story I've ever experienced in a AAA game. And I played the Thief reboot.
Wow.
So that tells you how bad it is.
Worse than Watch Dogs?
Worse than Watch Dogs.
You can say worse than the first game?
The first game isn't even as bad as Watch Dogs. It is so awful. I'm fine with unlikable characters in games, but I still want to have to spend time around. I still have to want to spend time around these unlikable characters. All the characters in Mirror's Edge Catalyst are unlikable, but unintentionally so. So they're insufferable. Anyway,
I don't want to shit on Ubi because I'm kind of bored of doing it, honestly. But I don't know why they feel like every character has to be such a cliche in every single way. The second you introduce a character, like this guy's going to betray me in the third act, guess what? It's one of those things that they're just not. They're not making games complex enough. They really don't need to, but. Make them a little more interesting because, damn, I'm not looking forward to whatever the next Assassin's Creed is because I know feel like I've already played it, you know? So, whatever. Or Ruby.
They really. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you describe Mirror's Edge as visceral, I guess I latched onto that because it reminded me of how Grand Theft Auto 5's first-person mode is, and it's like the only other game I know of where you can see all your limbs and all your individual actions being played out like that.
I didn't know the first-person mode was like that. That's actually really neat.
Yeah, like everything you do, from like your drinking, your shooting, it's very, it's very intuitive in that way, but it's also very, like, I sometimes got really bad motion sickness from it because it's, if you do a dodge roll, your character will literally dodge roll and you're just spinning, and it is.
That sounds awesome.
Like the way you described it, like the drinking and whatever else you do in first person, that sounds like the Smash My Bitch Up music video. You guys know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. But yeah, it sounds really neat.
It's neat, and like some of the best parts about it is like when you fly your plane up as high as you can, jump out, and you're just parachuting back down. In first person, you're just kind of watching, like, you see just the pretty designs of the island, and I feel like that's the only way you can really experience it in first person because you get to see it at least through something's eyes.
I wonder how that would be in VR.
I think I'd vomit.
Yeah, like I've seen people play like a hacked version of Mirror's Edge in VR, and they're like screaming while they're playing. Any other games you guys think have interesting movement mechanics?
I want to introduce at least the Metal Gear series as a way of, like, I guess because of how it evolved with the technology and how movement evolved with it, from 2D games to 3D movement to even 4D movement and some of the other ones. I guess when I say 4D, I meant with depth. Like specifically in like 4, how interesting, it puts swimming in there, it puts crawling, climbing, even the dumb turret sections, at least still fun. You had a little entire section where you're stalking someone. It feels like a noir game, and so it has a completely different feel from everything else. And then there's the microwave hallway where your character's movement is literally the whole purpose of this whole scene, and you're feeling this sort of you're feeling Snake's pain as he goes through the microwave hallway. And I just feel like the story, like, I guess Kojima has such a great idea of how movement would impact things, from hiding in boxes to crawling to hiding in ducts, stuff like that.
It sounds like I've never actually played a Metal Gear game, but it sounds like Kojima has a very good grasp of how movement mechanics complement narrative.
Yes.
That's a skill that's unfortunately in short supply in the game design world.
He does a really good job of designing his games where they, I feel like there's so much depth in there as a game rather than something else. I know he gets made fun of for pretentiousness and for designing movies as games, but I really feel like the game portions themselves have a lot of interesting things that you would never actually see if you explore it normally. But if you mess around with some of the weirdest things, I just feel like there's actual game design there rather than just, and creativity, just doing the basic amount of effort.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So earlier we were talking about games that are so bad they're good, and we're also talking about movement mechanics. Let's marry the two together and talk about Fumblecore.
Yeah.
So for those of you who aren't aware, Fumblecore is kind of a play on words of the genre of movies known as mumblecore, which are all these low-budget indie films that people like the Duplass brothers used to make. Fumblecore refers to games that have intentionally obtuse movement mechanics, like games like QWOP or Octodad or Surgeon Simulator. Have you guys played any of those Fumblecore type games? Do you have any interesting opinions on them, or uninteresting opinions? Any kind of opinions on them?
I've played Octodad, and I found it enjoyable in a puzzle sense, but it is very, as you said, unintuitive. It is almost obscene, how
just spaghetti noodled and how convoluted this is. It always reminds me of this little joke that Yahtzee, the game reviewer, made about Duke Nukem Duke Nukem Forever, where you play it, where you had to use the controller to move his arms, and you had to use like Square and X to make him like blink and fart and shit. I was like, that's how it reminds me of.
So, have any of the rest of you played any Fumblecore games?
I played Surgeon Simulator, and I thought it was a joke for a long time until I started to see videos of actually people playing it. Probably one of the most fun I've had with one is, I don't even know what the real name of this game is. It's called Shower with Your Dad Simulator.
That is the real name of the game.
Have you ever?
The real name of the game.
Have you ever played it?
Wait, that's a Fumblecore game?
Well, I don't know. I mean, in a way, because the movement is not like it's supposed to be like you're running around on a slippery shower, you know, and the dads pop up kind of constantly, and the movement in it is really, really rough. But yeah, I mean that's probably the closest I could think of as a game where I played for way too long. I got bored with Surgeon Simulator very quickly. But yeah, I played Co-op. I actually beat Co-op. For some reason, the hurdle got jammed under my guy's leg, and
That's how I beat Co-op.
I basically just like moved my heel the entire time and like inched forward and beat it finally. But yeah, other than that, I mean, they're fun. You know, they're a funny game to play for a little bit, but yeah, I've never really been super into any of those games.
Yeah, I don't feel like, I mean, my favorite co-op related thing was someone like put footage from the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 5 where Snake is crawling around the hospital and unable to walk, and then they flash to Co-op 2, like right there. And cool in person for a while.
Wait, there's a Co-op 2?
I don't think so, but I know, but I think it kind of goes down to that I like games that are fluid, that just, you know, makes you just want to go out, you know, just you're able to do everything. And Co-op was kind of cute for a while, but I never got particularly far down the track. And Octodad was also a cute idea, but at the same time, kind of like, can I just be good at this? Like, I'm aware the controls are purposely, you know, clunky because, you know, there's, you know, this and this, but I wanted to make myself feel like I'm good at it, and it just wasn't happening. So
yeah,
it just never clicked to me.
Hard to improve. So there isn't a Co-op 2, by the way, but I checked it up. There's 2 Co-op, which is 2-player Co-op, and it says, click to begin, plug in a second keyboard for best results.
It's very optimistic.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, if there were any Fumblecore games that were multiplayer, like up to the point where you could have 4 people playing, each one's controlling a limb?
Didn't the Octodad sequel have co-op?
I think the Octodad 2 one has. I think it was like introduced. I never saw it actually done.
I think there was an awesome Games Done Quick that had a Octodad co-op.
The only thing,
Octodad, according to the internet, Octodad Dadley's Catch supports local co-op for up to 4 players. I don't know how exactly that works. Oh yeah, it says each player controls 1 set of limbs.
Oh, okay.
Depending on, I guess, who you play it with, probably the pinnacle of this genre would be Johann Sebastian Joust, right? I mean, wouldn't that be the end-all, be-all? Have you guys ever heard of that game?
I don't know much about it.
No.
Okay. The only time I've ever played it was at PAX, and this was like, I don't know, a long time ago. But basically, you hold those. What are the ice cream cones for the PlayStation called?
The PlayStation
dildos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everybody gets one of those, and you basically run around, and you can't move it too much, like you can't jostle it too much, and you try to basically bump each other's arms to make it fall or something like that. And it was pretty fun with the room full of people, but you probably needed like, I don't know, $1,000 worth of moves to make it really any fun. But it was really fun to play at PAX. It was one of those like floor demo games that a lot of people would kind of crowd around and just watch what people were doing, you know. It was fun, but yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't the most, you know, easily controlled aspect of the game, because there was sometimes I couldn't figure out why mine would go off and sometimes why it wouldn't. But fun game. Watch some videos of it. People act really goofy, and you'll usually see them playing at some kind of like, you know, con or something like that. Very rarely is it just people in their living room playing it.
Yeah,
I definitely think it was meant to be that way.
Yeah. I've heard there's a couple bars that you can play it at, stuff like that. But it's definitely one of those games that if you want to feel really uncoordinated, that's the way to go.
Yeah, there are actually a couple of games in that vein. There's this other one I've heard of called Button, where Button is an acronym for Brutally Unfair Tactics Are Totally Okay Now. And it's played with an Xbox controller. And what you do is you set an Xbox controller on the ground, and then it asks you to do various stuff involving the controller. So a bunch of people might have to wrestle to see who can get to the controller first and press a button, for example. So you end up with people basically wrestling outside the game instead of inside on the screen. But yeah, that sort of takes Fumblecore off the screen and puts it in real life, which I think is really hilarious. It's hilarious to see people wrestling each other over a controller. But yeah, it's a neat way to sort of take movement into the real world.
Well, probably the coolest game that I've seen. Have you guys seen the previews for this game called Fru for the Xbox One Kinect?
No.
Fru, I've heard of this. Is that the one where you
your body basically becomes like, think about like a 2D platformer.
Your body becomes a stage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like your body reveals platforms and stuff. So you've got, I don't know if it's one person playing. I think it is. I think one person plays and one person is basically the body that's the platform. It looks like it'd be really fun. Like you kind of have to contort in weird ways to touch switches, and like you have to put your arms above your head and kick your leg out or something like that to make a platform appear so that the person can jump on it. Really cool looking game, and it basically everybody said, hey, too little too late in terms of Kinect actually being figured out, but the people who play it love it. It's gotten great reviews as far as video games for the Kinect go.
For those of you who are Xbox One owners, do you have the Kinect model or the non-Kinect model?
I have the Kinect.
So have you played Fru?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No. It just got released like maybe last week. It's very recent, and that's one of the reasons people were saying, hey, if this would have launched with the Kinect, getting out of the movement thing or whatever. Kinect to me has always been underutilized. Nobody's ever really figured out how to use it correctly, in my opinion. So it's one of those weird scenarios where, like, if somebody ever came along and really figured out the Kinect, could have a really good possibility of making a successful movement-based game, but I don't think anybody ever really figured out it past the gimmick that the Wii controller or the PlayStation Move was.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things where you could make a really neat game out of it, but the players wouldn't be there for it. And so if the players wouldn't be there for it, then there's no sense in investing time and effort and research and development into making a good game that uses the Kinect. So you end up in this vicious cycle where nobody wants to buy the Kinect because there are no games for it, but nobody wants to make games for it because nobody's buying it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely check, at least if you have a Kinect, or if you even want to see some cool gameplay videos, definitely check out that Fru game. But it's probably the only time that I'll ever recommend a Kinect game. I do love Kinect because of the voice control. I'm not gonna lie, that gets used all the time in my house. My wife gets mad when my PlayStation 4 doesn't do things when she says to do. Like, she'll yell at my TV, like Xbox volume up, and she'll just like, oh, sorry, it's the PlayStation on, and stuff like that. She's really, really gotten into the voice control of it. She searches Cortana constantly. Like, she would be a great advertisement for Xbox if they ever decided to make one.
Yeah, see, I'm weird in that I don't like talking to my technological devices. Like, for example, anytime I'm on the phone and you have to call a hotline and you have to state what you're calling about, that makes me really angry. I don't like talking to machines. But I think the technology is really neat. I will say that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that really helped was when we first had my kid, he was really into remote controls as like a baby, as like a 1-year-old. He would always like just, bang on the buttons and stuff. So we would just take the batteries out and give him the remote controls and then use only the voice chat to control the TV through the Kinect. And it saved us so many headaches because, even now when like the controller's missing or whatever, you'd say Xbox on, everything turns on, it automatically changes to the right channel, you can program it all. If you take the time to do it, it's a very, very good media system.
Yeah, it's a nice way to. It's adding this layer of convenience that wasn't there before for a lot of people. So in that way, it's much appreciated. So one Fumblecore game that I wanted to mention was, have any of you guys played Grow Home?
No. Yeah, I heard of it. It's is it EA?
No, it's actually Ubisoft.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Ubisoft of all publishers. Last year, they came out with this $6 game that they just put up on Steam at some point in, I think, January of last year. And it's this delightful little Fumblecore game where the way you control the titular, not the titular character, but the character in the game was this adorable little robot named Bud. The way you control him is by using the triggers on a controller to move his hands. And that's how he climbs up things. So he clambers along the ground or up this beanstalk structure using the triggers. And that's not something that, or sorry, I should say, it's a neat little mechanic to me that it sort of takes, the whole Fumblecore thing of moving your limbs independently and actually makes it playable.
Yeah, that's a key thing. Like, because I can imagine getting really frustrated really quickly if that was the whole game design around that. But
yeah, so there's some stuff that's a little less fumbleish. There are parts where you can glide or fly or float through the game, and those control a little bit better than the movement. The movement stays a little bit wonky throughout the entire game, but it's sort of part of the adorable ramshackle charm of the whole thing. So I really enjoyed that, and I think it's been less.
When you say,
novelty.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I was gonna say, when you say trigger movement, like when you press down the trigger, does his arm just move more, like the further you press it down, or I was trying to get this like figured out in my head.
Yeah. How do I? I'm trying to remember actually.
Is it like Bionic Commando style, where it kind of just like if you hold down right trigger, he kind of flings his arms around, or?
I believe the longer you hold down the trigger, I don't believe it's pressure sensitive. So I don't think it keeps track of how much you press down the trigger, but the longer you hold the trigger, I believe the farther out he moves his hand. But don't quote me on that because I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I actually really enjoyed it, and I think it's less of a novelty than other Fumblecore-ish games. And that actually takes sort of the aesthetic and the ethos of these kinds of games and makes like an actual game, not just a joke out of it. See, that was really interesting for me. Any other Fumblecore games you guys want to mention?
Nope, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to our third topic, or our third item on the agenda. We've talked about like 20 topics so far. But the other topic on the agenda we wanted to talk about was we're going to not even do a segue, and we're going to go all the way back to talk about gaming in our childhood. One thing that we wanted to talk about was games that we played in our childhood, and more specifically, what games actually got us into playing video games in the first place. So let me ask you guys, what is one of the first games that you played?
I started out with an Atari 2600 playing games. So I had a treasure trove of awesome stuff to play. Pac-Man, of course, but Defender was really my jam. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played that, even in the arcade. No?
Yep.
No,
I played it a bunch.
Okay. Moving
Defender
on.
clones, yeah. I think there was like an Apple II version I must have played, but
Yeah. That was a fun game where you're just trying to destroy aliens from... defeat aliens from destroying the city. But I also played fun games like Barnstorming, where you fly through barns and void windmills. And that's it. Exciting stuff. But what was I going to do? Not play video games? But I would have to say there's one game in particular that really got me into it. There's this game called Star Raiders. Very similar to, obviously, a ripoff of Star Wars, where you would be where you're flying a spaceship, and you are, it's from your view from the cockpit, and you're just trying to get from one point of the map to another. You stop at a station to fill up and repair ship and everything, but on the way, you're just shooting all these TIE fighters, which are animated just like little pink H's that come up on the screen. And it kind of plays like the scene in A New Hope, where Luke and Han are on the Millennium Falcon trying to shoot the TIE fighters. It almost looks almost exactly like that game. And that's what really, really got me going into the gaming right there. And it was much better than playing E.T., which we all know about that game. And it's just as bad as advertised. So,
yeah, the legends are numerous and well documented.
Oh yeah, and I played that game on. I mean, it was one of the few games I had, so I played it. I defeated it, and it was nonsensical. It was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. So, PT, how did you start out gaming?
I think as a whole, I mean, I have this weird background memory of me, I guess, starting with ColecoVision or something, like these vague blob memories of like the Smurfs game or something. And sometimes I'll look it up, on YouTube and say, I guess that was the game, yeah. And but mostly it was the NES that kind of started the whole thing. I mean, Super Mario Brothers there, and I distinctly recall for some reason, I guess I had a bunch of people over and we were like playing the original Zelda, the Legend of Zelda, and just people just exploring the first few, frames of the map, and just like how, and you were thinking to yourself at the time, like, how can we ever like figure this map out? Like, we're gonna get so lost. And of course what modern games are today, but essentially my childhood was just a lot of, games like that, a lot of rentals. I mean, going to the video store, renting stuff. I think the video store knew me pretty quickly for that guy who would rent Chrono Trigger every week, as an example.
Chrono Trigger was, I think, part of a lot of people's childhoods, I'm finding out.
But it's a little vague to say there, but yeah, I mean, back in the day, like, just early NES stuff, just kind of collecting games the best we can. I mean, my parents were never like super into video games, so they were never like, boy, we should totally buy these things for you unless you like save up for them. So it was, just take as you get them. And luckily I had a decent amount of taste where I didn't like end up with some LGN game for me to play forever. Like some poor guy playing Back to the Future, like, I'm gonna make something out of this game.
Yeah, at least you had good stuff to play. So Armando, what got you into gaming? How did you start out?
I think one of my first memories, I guess I'm gonna reveal how young I am, because it was Super Mario World. I think it was my first like legit gaming memory. I started off with a Super Nintendo, and I just remember enjoying this game so much, and then getting super frustrated with Link to the Past. I do not have a good relationship with the Legend of Zelda games. I love them, but they always frustrated me as a kid, because I guess I didn't have a lot of logic when it came to playing them. I was stuck on the Great Deku Tree of Ocarina of Time for 5 years because I could not figure out that you can light a stick on fire and use it to burn the web. So
it's a long time to be stuck on a video game puzzle.
Yeah, I abandoned that game so many times I went back to Banjo-Kazooie. So, but yeah, like one of my first memories is Super Mario World, and a lot of times I guess I'd go back to games as my only respite anyway, just because those are always like nice memories. And then from there went to Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, but really it was just Mario that got me hooked.
For sure. Like, did you play Super Mario 64 a lot?
Yeah, I put a lot of hours into Super Mario 64. I think I put way too many hours in a lot of Mario games. For some reason, right after I got the Super Nintendo, my stepdad bought us the original NES. So I went through Super Mario 1 and the Doki Doki Panic knockoff 2. I think that's 2.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
And then I put way too many hours in 3 because my stepdad would play with me. So, not something I was used to. So it was, I guess, a fun experience. So that's why I always have such a nice experience with Mario.
How does granted, Mario Brothers 1 is still a fun game to play today, but how does someone like of your age say, well, I just played Super Mario World, and now here's Super Mario Brothers 1. Like very archaic graphics and sound wise, but the gameplay is still very, very sound, obviously. But how did you react to that?
I guess I never paid attention to it. I've never made it a big deal to me. I guess to view it as a downgrade. It was just a different game from a different time, but it still was very fun. It's just not very good to look at in comparison to the later games. But I guess I never really judged it on those. I just judged on its gameplay merits rather than how it looked.
You could also be in a situation where there were a lot of sequels back with the NES that were radical changes from their original game. For example, my first Castlevania game was 2. And I like Castlevania 2, by the way. It's clunky and vague and, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I like it for what it is. But so I bought the original Castlevania, it's like, oh, what's this strange, unforgiving side-scroller? And granted, I like them both, and I like most Castlevania games, but I think Zelda 2 and the original Zelda is another example.
Yeah.
So I went from Zelda 1 to 2, and Zelda 2 is also another one which I will defend. So I'm weird. I guess I like the weird sequels, I guess. But that's another sort of example of kind of perhaps someone's childhood is like, why are these games so different all of a sudden?
So the one thing I want to get back to what you mentioned about playing games from your childhood and playing games that sort of predate your childhood. So when I was young, when you're a kid, video games are scarce, and that there are things your parents might buy you from time to time, or things you might even play at a friend's place, but you might not own it yourself. So playing an old video game doesn't feel like a downgrade. It still feels like a treat when you're a kid. But now that I'm an adult and games aren't scarce anymore, if I were to go back and play an old game, I'd think of it as a downgrade. Goes to show you how attitudes change as you grow up. In some ways, you become even more sort of used to your creature comforts. So, Kappa, what did you play?
I talked about
growing up?
Donald Duck's Playground last time. We talked about this. It was more of an edutainment game, but that was definitely my first game I really remember playing. Probably the first games just in general I remember like actually seeking out and buying, and not just my dad coming home with from the we bought all our games at the flea market back then. That tells you a little bit about my early gaming days. But the ones I remember like telling my dad that I had to go get were all the early LucasArts games. I was really a big LucasArts fanboy. If you think about like kind of where they came out at their initial releases, they did a lot of tie-ins to their movies and stuff. So you got a lot of like Labyrinth, Indiana Jones, a lot of those ones. I remember Loom being one of the really first good ones, Maniac Mansion, and of course Secret of Monkey Island. So those was kind of like all those early LucasArts games are really my favorites. I didn't own an NES actually, weirdly, because my dad still had the computer for us, and that's really what we used at the time. But I finally got an SNES around 94-ish, so that was probably like the Final Fantasy VI's. But at that same time, I was playing Warcraft on my PC, Orcs versus Humans, and that was really kind of that era. But the very first one was definitely Donald Duck's Playground, before moving on to the LucasArts one. One of the not to be forgotten ones that I always remember playing was Cannon Fodder. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
It's a really silly, like top-down kind of. I would say it's like an anti-war game is the best way I could describe it. But yeah, it was a really kind of goofy shoot 'em up game. It was actually when my dad would buy. So the setup at the flea market was when you would go to this booth and this guy just had floppy disks, right? Completely illegal selling pirated games at a flea market, but he mislabeled stuff all the time because it was just a guy, burning CDs. And it was actually, I thought I was getting Pipe Dream, which was, I don't know if you remember Pipe Dream.
I remember Pipe Dream.
Yeah, so I thought it was Pipe Dream, but it was actually Cannon Fodder. And my dad saw me playing it, and he was like, what the hell are you playing? So, yeah, he thought my dad actually watched me play it for a little bit, but he liked it. He thought it was pretty okay for me. It's graphic, but in a cartoonish way. But yeah, I don't know. That was one of my other first games.
It's sort of like the old Army Man games.
Yeah, I think you move with I think it's probably the arrow keys, and then your cursor is where you shoot. And as you
old twin setup.
Yeah, and as you play through, like your soldiers gain levels and stuff like that, and then there's a really, I don't know, kind of a weird thing at the end of it where it just kind of, like if your guys die, it does like a memorial for them, and it's like it's just kind of, I don't know. I think they remade it recently. It probably one hell of a phone game, but it was a pretty fun game even way back when.
Yeah. So what I played when I was really young, what got me into gaming was, I didn't have a console growing up. I never did, but my dad used to bring a lot of shareware diskettes home, so that got me into stuff like Commander Clean. Not Commander Clean, that's not a game. Commander Keen and Clyde's Adventure.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever play Clyde's Adventure? Because for the longest time, I thought, like, when the internet was young, I went searching for this and couldn't find anything about it. And now I went back and found it. For the longest time, I thought it was like a fever dream I had when I was 5 years old. But no, it's an actual game that exists.
Yeah, after you talked about it last time, I went and looked it up. And I had no idea that it was like such a big series, I guess. Well, not a series. I think they only made the one, but there's no enemies in it. And at the time, that must have been crazy to make an actual puzzle game, because basically everything had something that chased you or something you had to do something. But it looks like it was just a straight puzzle game.
Which game?
Clyde's Adventure.
Clyde's Adventure. Huh. I seem to recall that there were actually some enemies at some point, but maybe I might be misremembering it or confusing it with another game. Like my early gaming experiences are like a fever dream. I don't remember them all that well, except for Commander Keen, which I remember very well for some reason.
This is what I read about it last time. It said the main character has a supply of energy that depletes whenever he walks, jumps, or falls. If his energy reaches zero, he dies. There's no enemies, and it's predominantly a puzzle game. I don't know, that just was surprising to me.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'm definitely confusing it with another game. Confusing it with another game that starts with H, whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Halloween Harry?
Might be Halloween Harry that I'm confusing it with. It might be something else. I'll put it in the Linkdump because I'll remember it then. But yeah, there was a similar platformer that had enemies. Yeah, so Clyde was a puzzle game. Yeah, I remember that now. I remember never being able to beat it.
Because I think Halloween Harry, if I'm not wrong, it was probably on one of those Apogee games. Do you know what I'm talking about? When it was like Halloween Harry, and there was a whole bunch of the original Duke Nukems. I think might have been Apogee. And then I'm trying to think of who else. But yeah, I remember. Remember when you used to get those like shareware discs, and it would have like 10 shareware games, all the little first levels of them. Blakestone, Commander Keen, all those ones. I remember all those little Apogee discs.
That's definitely something that because I was on the console side, really never got to enjoy. I mean, I imagine back in the day that was just very, very interesting to behold. I mean, if you want to talk about weird childhood memories, the first time I played Wolfenstein 3D was at a Sam's Club. Like somebody just said, "Oh, you want to boot this up?" And here's me playing this game where I'm just shooting these people, and I didn't think much of it. I mean, it was pretty fun, but
it was PC gaming was a really weird world back then. I mean, you had to have boot discs. You had like you would get games and they would come on like 8 discs, and you lose disc 4 or disc 5 would never really load for some reason. It was always a really weird. It was like a crapshoot when you would buy games. I mean, luckily I wasn't paying full price for mine. I was buying it from a flea market, so if it was screwed up, my dad would go back to the flea market the next day and say, hey, this is screwed up, and we would get the full game back. But yeah, especially back then, it was you never knew what you were going to get was going to work. If you were paying for a shareware game, that was also really common. Like, you would buy a game and it would be like the demo of the game and not the game itself. I really wish that I would trade that experience in for a console any day of the week. So
yeah, PC gaming really was the Wild West back then.
Yeah.
And it's only in the past, I would say, decade or so that it's become somewhat standardized.
Well, a big part of that's Steam. I mean, even before Steam, I mean, I remember like having to buy PC games. They never really were stocked well at GameStop. They never really were stocked well at Best Buy or anywhere else. So if you really wanted a PC game, you had to kind of get lucky at one of those Babbages. Remember Babbages?
I mean, I grew up in Canada. I don't think we had those.
You probably had EB, Electronic Boutique, right?
Yes.
Yeah, same store as Babbage's. And then if you were really lucky and you were looking for a PC game, you would always just have to kind of like ask people, and then they would order it directly from the company. So yeah, Steam really kind of revolutionized a lot of that. I remember buying a lot of my PC games at like Staples and Office Depot for some reason too. Yeah. Like they would just always stock them, with like the work software. But yeah, it definitely Steam, for all the good and bad. Steam has really kind of made it a much easier way to buy PC games.
All this talk about the early PC games, it brings one old one to mind that I played after I stopped playing the Atari. Is the got for $5 at the Best Buy bin, the California Raisins MS-DOS game. Does anyone know of this? Oh, you remember it?
Yeah, I played it.
Oh man,
yeah,
it was something else. But the theme song was excellent. Heard it through the grapevine in like chiptune. Was awesome. It was great.
Was this game subtitled? Wikipedia's telling me this game is subtitled "The Grape Escape."
Yeah.
No, it was the. Hold on.
You're talking about the one that was like teal and pink, and like you jumped around. It's kind of like a Donkey Kong looking game. Yeah, that's the one I played.
I just sent a link to what I found here. It was something about a fireworks factory is the only thing popping up in my head, but that's because
Cereal Factory is the picture I came
Cereal
up with.
Factory, yes. I was going to say fireworks factory was because we mentioned Poochie earlier.
Yeah.
But oh man, that
the Grape
game...
Escape was the canceled one. Never mind.
It didn't get greenlit after this first one? It's amazing.
I think it was literally called California Raisins Cereal Factory.
In the Cereal Factory. That's what it is. Yes. That was, man. Again, it was...
They were really popular at the time, though, I will say that.
Oh, yeah. Again, playing this game, it was like this... I had no other games. So, hell yes, I was going to play the California Raisins.
There was the prototype NES game that never came out as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the Grape Escape. That was the one that.
Oh, yes.
Was canceled.
But yeah, I mean, but even back when you really knew what you were buying and everything, it always felt like with PC games, especially early on, like licensing was the way that everybody went on PC. Like you would play so many licensed games that were just not worth a crap at all. I remember like the Lord of the Rings game with some of the really early stuff, and it was all horrible stuff.
Oh, War in Middle Earth?
Yeah, that one. It was like you just run around a volcano for no reason for hours until like the right thing pops up that you need to kill.
Yeah. And as a gigantic Tolkien nerd, when I was a kid playing that game, it was, I thought, the greatest thing ever. But looking at the mechanics and everything now, your units could only cross a river if there was a ford or a bridge. And
so nobody
even
can
then,
swim in that game.
no. It's all moving army units. It was a pretty cool real-time strategy game. Well, pretty cool in context, but you move army units around and everything, getting ready for the whole war, and then you have to micromanage moving the hobbits so they don't get insta-killed by Nazgul.
And
yeah, and
yeah.
you had to basically run around I think it was like a volcano or something, while the volcano would shoot lava randomly, and like it was almost like a pattern, like you had to memorize the pattern, otherwise everybody would just get wiped out. It was a really, really terrible game, but
Oh yeah, it was. But yeah, I played that too. Man, this
yeah.
this is memory lane right here, guys.
Yeah. So we've gone down memory lane ourselves. What games do you think kids from this generation, like people who are kids right now, are going to remember when they're our age?
Call of Duty, Halo.
Call of Duty 11.
It's depressing to say that, but it's probably true in a way.
Yeah, I mean,
Or multiple
Pokemon
games.
still is gigantic with
Pokemon was gigantic when I was a kid.
Yeah, it has held up. I mean, it's insane. I mean, you could have two kids just meet for the first time, and then they're just talking about Pokemon instantly. It's just so ingrained now. But
Yeah,
I mean,
that used to be like the first question you would ask when you met somebody new. When I think I was like 8 at the time, I'd ask them, "What's your name?" Great. I know your name now. What's your favorite Pokemon?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try to think about what kids these days really play, and it seems like what really, I know we talked about this last time. I know I'm repeating myself, but those YouTube games. I mean, anything that PewDiePie is getting into I think Minecraft is going to be the, kind of the bellwether, but even things like Five Nights at Freddy's or all those kind of games that I don't know if I'll ever really get Minecraft. I think I'm just aged out of that. I played it. It's okay, but I couldn't devote every waking moment to it. It bored the hell out of me, but I know there are kids that do that, and I feel like everything these days is, how cool can you make a game look in a GIF or in a YouTube video, or what YouTube star can play it and look like he's having the most fun. And I think that's where everything's going right now. It's not so much you playing the game, but watching someone else playing the game, which is completely bizarre to me. But that's
so that's how kids are developing.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that's how kids are developing their memories. Sorry, go ahead.
My baby brother, he's I think about 9 now. He's playing on my PC. It's a PC that can run basically any game he wants at like really high settings. But all he wants to do is sit there and watch low quality YouTube videos of people playing Minecraft, and it makes no sense to me. I'm just like, you can play Minecraft and mod it beyond your wildest imagination, and you just sit here watching these Australians play it and just say funny things to each other.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many YouTube stars and entire companies that have been built around, making these videos for kids. Like things like Yogscast and Achievement Hunter, that's what these guys do. They make Minecraft videos up the wazoo, and then kids watch them and have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, kids are getting influenced by YouTube these days. Any other games you think they're going to remember years from now that they're going to look back on as fondly as we do on like Zelda or Mario?
I think it's going to be at least when it comes to what I've seen from I guess kids nowadays, it's a lot of adult games. Like I always see them always want to talk about Assassin's Creed or Grand Theft Auto. I guess it's different from like how a bunch of kids my age would always talk about stuff like Mario, Zelda. I just think it's funny that they almost immediately jump into stuff that I wasn't allowed to play until I was like 15, 16, and they're like 8, 9, and they're already talking about Grand Theft Auto.
Oh yeah, when my kid wants to play video games, he doesn't want to play edutainment. He wants to jump right into Overwatch, So he'll sit there and shoot bots for 20 minutes and has fun doing that. Like, I know part of that is him watching me, but I think that that ship has sailed. You can't kind of put a kid in front of an edutainment game anymore. He's really going to end up just gravitating towards what's good, I guess. So.
Yeah, and I played a lot of edutainment as a kid because that's what my parents would buy for me. Because according to them, if it didn't have educational value, it was a waste of time.
Yeah, same thing. And, when we would go to computer class in school, I remember the big thing was, I guess this is like, old man, whatever, but do you guys remember when you weren't allowed to go into DOS? Like in computer class, like that was like, they were like, don't go into DOS. At least in my school, because if you got into DOS, that's where all the games were. And, like, they had, like, Lemonade Stand and, you know, Oregon Trail and all those kind of games.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, Mario Teaches Typing. So, like, all my school had all these Apple IIe's, but if you went into DOS, that's where all the games were kept. So, like, it was, like, this thing at school. Like, people would pass on, like, notes like, hey, go type exactly this. You know, it's like C:// you know, like, I remember all those little things. And we would pass notes like, hey, type exactly this when you get into DOS, and you can play Lemonade Stand, or you can play, you know, Storybook Creator or whatever. And that was like currency in school when you would find a new DOS game. But I mean,
the irony is that all of those are educational to begin with.
yeah, no, like we would. I think it was smart. 'Cause, like, who knows? The teachers probably would have let us play if we asked it, but like by saying we couldn't, you know, like it became like forbidden fruit and way more interesting. So.
Well, the only thing people did for Oregon Trail was hunt for food anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just go out there. I remember if you start out at the banker, you get more money, so you can buy more bullets, so you can just sit there and shoot everything.
That's just
Yeah, for us in school there was, and I'm really revealing my Canadianness now. There was Yukon Trail, and Cross Country Canada was this educational game where you play the role of a trucker delivering various commodities to various cities across Canada.
One of the commodities maple syrup. We're going to get really Canadian.
Maple syrup.
It's just boring commodities. It was stuff like potash.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really boring.
Was it developed by Mech?
I believe it. Well, I can look it up.
Because MECC is actually kind of an interesting story, because just how they just developed a ton of things that people just fondly remember. Like the Oregon Trail and all the Muncher games and all sorts of things.
Published by Ingenuity Works, according to Wikipedia. But there's not much information on it because Wikipedia is very America-centric, so something that's kind of exclusive to Canada wouldn't really make it on there.
Maybe you should try wikipedia.ca.
One would think there's a Canadapedia out there somewhere. Unfortunately not. But yeah, so that was the thing that we all played. It was really funny because you could pick up hitchhikers in that game, but every time you picked up a hitchhiker and you forgot to lock the back of your truck, there's a chance they would steal your merchandise. So somebody could run off with a whole bunch of potash for whatever reason. I don't know what he'd use it for.
How?
I don't know.
Did he put it in a trash bag and just sling it over his shoulder or something?
That's what he's doing. Like, what's he gonna do with the pot? Like, make fertilizer and then eventually, I don't know, make a bomb? Is like, were you preventing terrorist attacks?
Yeah.
Did he laugh maniacally as he twirled a mustache as he ran off the truck?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no animation, so it would just say like, the hitchhiker stole your potash or whatever.
Oh no.
And you'd be like, oh no, I have to drive all the way back to Saskatchewan now.
That sounds so weird to the non-American listeners here. I mean the non-Canadian listeners. I'm sorry.
Where was this on all the Canadian Day podcast, man? You had all this back
I had
Canadian.
all this Canadian content. I was holding it back.
Apparently.
Yeah, and I think there was this other game, and I don't know if it made it to the States, but it's called Math Circus.
Never heard it.
Yeah, I can't remember. So basically, there's a whole bunch of math mini games that you would play. Yeah, and okay, I think it was also not exclusively Canadian, but yeah, it was this whole bunch of these math-related mini games in this bizarre circus-themed scenario, and you had to do stuff like there were like Tower of Hanoi-ish puzzles, but instead of blocks, it was balls on seals balancing balls on their heads, and bizarre things like that. So yeah, it was really a strange experience playing all these really weird games they had on school computers.
I like edutainment in general. It was just a very, I guess, it's a shrinking part of our entertainment community when it comes to games.
Yeah, edutainment has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, unfortunately, which is sad because I mean some of my best memories were screwing around in edutainment games, and I'm sad that they're not really around anymore.
Like I remember discussing. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I just saw the because I googled Map Circus just out of curiosity, and there's a BuzzFeed story. It's like the 5th link. Why Map Circus is the most important game of our generation. From BuzzFeed staff out of Canada.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah. It has a seal balancing the balls on its noses game. It was hilariously difficult, I remember. Oh man, I'm seeing all these games now. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway, so that was a nostalgia trip for me. I'll dump that in the link dump. Any other edutainment games you guys remember?
I was having this discussion on Gameological a couple months back. I forgot with who, but we were discussing stuff like Clue Finders and something with like
probably Fluffy Heretic.
Yeah, I think it was Fluffy.
Or Space Pope. Shout out to those guys who are big into edutainment.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry, what you were saying?
Like, I remember playing these games. I would play them. I would know all the answers by heart, but I would still replay them because it was, I don't know, because it had this like cute little social aspect, where it's just a bunch of kids going out and doing stuff. They're totally '90s kids, and they're awful dressing, and their like inability of saying anything other than cowabunga. But it was just, I guess it has this social aspect. It has this educational aspect. It was just, simple fun, but still in this form of a game where I guess my child self would be like, okay, this is still fun, even if it's not very. Oh, I don't really know if I want to learn about Georgia O'Keeffe through this little video game, but really, who am I to say?
Wait, they're teaching you about Georgia O'Keeffe when you were in elementary school?
Yeah,
they definitely can't teach you about Georgia O'Keeffe properly at that age.
Yes. It was just like showing off a couple of things of hers, but it was just like, just I guess as an introduction to get you to actually research and do things.
Introduction to flowers. Anyway, after that bit of immaturity, so yeah, edutainment, big part of our childhoods, and other games that weren't edutainment, big parts of our childhoods. And just one more thing I wanted to mention. You said that there's a social aspect. Being good at things like Math Circus or other edutainment games was like the only time in elementary school where you were cool for being smart. Like if you were really good at those games, people thought that was awesome. But if you were like getting great marks on your math test or whatever, you were a huge dweeb. I thought that was really funny because same skills, being really good at Math Circus or doing well in your math quiz. But one's cool and one makes you a dweeb. I don't know. That always struck me as really funny. Any other edutainment or childhood games you guys want to mention? I love what Snazzlenuts said. He's just like, no. Why did you?
I was gonna mention typing stuff. I don't really know a ton beyond just laughing at Mavis Beacon.
Oh yeah.
Mavis Beacon. A lot of people think Mavis Beacon is a real person.
Yes.
Like everyone's. I forget. I forget. I read this article a long time ago. But basically, they were talking to people who worked at the company that made Mavis Beacon, and they said that every few weeks they get an inquiry about somebody asking if they could book Mavis Beacon as a guest speaker, because I thought she was some like inspirational figure.
That's
really bizarre, but
that's
kind of
yeah.
Funny. We didn't have Mavis Beacon in school. We had All the Right Type, which is like Mavis Beacon but boring.
Great.
Yeah, so I was really bad at All the Right Type, and I was like failing typing classes in elementary school, I remember. And so, like, I was, like, coming home in tears because, like, my typing teacher had, like, threatened to fail me. And then my parents got me Mavis Beacon, and I learned typing on that, and I became awesome at typing, and got an A in typing.
Nice.
So Mavis Beacon helped me kick ass. So she's the real inspirational figure here.
I had Mario teach us typing, so Mario taught me to type.
Equally inspirational?
No, it was, yeah. I remember what I most remember from it is that if you could just bang on the keyboard and it would work just fine. Like there was no like penalty really. I don't know if that was like the easy mode or something of it, but yeah, it was not a very hard game.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that they would have a game that doesn't actually keep track of your errors. It doesn't really help you learn typing.
No, and well, there might have been harder modes or something, but I was on the very easy mode or whatever it was. I don't remember it much past. Yeah, it was the game that we had to play for like 2 minutes each day. You know, like in the before we could sneak into DOS or all those other things I was talking about.
Well, I'm sure we can find a let's play of it or a log play of it on YouTube, and we can put that in the link dump.
So you're just hitting S and L and K all over and over again.
I put on the link there. Something else I remember was
Miracle Piano Teaching System.
That got released on consoles, like an actual like keyboard that you would attach to your NES or Super NES, and you would play these mini games on a keyboard. It was kind of like a proto Guitar Hero in a way.
That's really interesting. So would like pressing the keys make a tune that would move a character around on the screen?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, I remember reading about it. I think it was Nintendo Power and maybe GamePro were talking about it. I mean, those were the times I was really reading video game magazines. But
yeah, that's one thing from my childhood that has not survived. Is the video game magazine.
Oh yeah. I was an EGM diehard. But yeah, that went the way of the everything else.
I'm friends with the GamePro. I think it was their editor-in-chief for the longest time during the late 2000s. Before they went under. And that's where I guess I developed a whole community based around that.
I still get Game Informer because of my GameStop card, and it comes in and I flip through it. But it's more advertisement at this point than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, when a video game store makes a magazine, it's definitely going to be to sell you stuff. When was the last time you read a 4 out of 10 review in Game Informer?
I remember there's this review of, it's like The Sims 2, one of the expansion packs about furniture. And there's a review that where the guy literally just typed in as many curse words as he could into the review. I think I want to say it was on Game Informer, but I'm pretty sure it was probably one of the smaller ones.
Yeah, I don't think Game Informer allows their writers to curse in their articles, unfortunately.
They do have one good feature around April Fools. They do like an April Fools couple of pages. It's actually pretty good, but the rest of it, I mean, it's more good for insidery information, and they do get some good. But by the time they get a scoop, it's already everywhere else on the internet too. But yeah, it's passable. But if it wasn't free, I don't know if I'd have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything's on the internet these days. So it's really hard to sort of justify print magazines, especially for gaming, which is really online now. So I think that's a good place as any to end our discussion of childhood gaming and gaming magazines and edutainment and all that other fun stuff. Any other thoughts you guys want to mention before we bring this to a close? Snazzlenuts, could I get another no from you, please?
No.
All right.
Well, I mean, is that okay? I mean, should I be stony silent like everyone else?
Don't come off like a downer, like, no, let's end the podcast.
I mean, we can end the podcast however we like. We ended the last podcast with Reggie's Murder Resort, so we can end this. We have full control over how we end this.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's as good a place as any to end it. Thank you to Armando, PT, Kappa, and Snazzlenuts for joining me on this wonderful journey through our childhoods and through movement and through shitting on Batman Arkham Knight. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to shit on Sonic some more. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And take care, everybody. Night.
Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, folks.
Yep.